I sat at the elegant dining table in my parents' home, watching my sister Diana hold court like she always did. Her wine glass waved dangerously as she gestured, telling yet another story about her latest business triumph. The acquisition was worth $50 million, she announced, preening under our parents' adoring gazes. Sterling Tech is now the fastest-growing software company in the state. My name is Meera Patel, and I've spent the last 5 years being the family disappointment. At least that's what they think I am. And what about you, Meera? Diana turned her attention to me, lips curving in that familiar condescending smile. Still working on that little startup of yours? What was it called again? Shadow something. Shadowbox Digital, I replied quietly, taking a sip of water. No wine for me tonight. I need a clear head for tomorrow's meetings. Right. Diana waved her hand dismissively. Doing websites for small businesses, isn't it? How? Quaint. Our mother jumped in, ever the peacekeeper. Not everyone can run a company like Sterling Tech, dear. Meera is doing her best with what she has. If they only knew what Shadowbox Digital really was. Behind the modest website and small downtown office that my family occasionally drove past, my tiny startup was actually one of the most innovative cybersecurity firms in the country. Our client list included government agencies, multinational corporations, and yes, several companies larger than Sterling Tech. But Diana had always been the star. Perfect grades, prestigious MBA, meteoric rise through the tech industry. When she founded Sterling Tech 6 years ago, our parents remortgaged their house to provide her seed funding. They never even asked what I was working on. I read about Sterling's new security platform, our father said proudly. Absolutely revolutionary. Diana, you're changing the entire industry. I bit back a smile, thinking about the security flaws our team had discovered in Sterling's platform just last week. Diana had dismissed our private warning sent through intermediaries, of course. Some tiny consulting firm couldn't possibly understand her sophisticated technology. Speaking of changing the industry, Diana continued, we're announcing a major merger tomorrow. One of the biggest deals in the state's history. She smiled smugly in my direction. But I'm sure you understand the importance of confidentiality agreements, Meera. Oh wait, your little web design company probably doesn't deal with those. My phone buzzed quietly in my lap. A message from my COO. Everything's set for tomorrow. Their board has approved the terms. Should I send the final paperwork to their lawyers? What was that, dear? My mother asked, noticing my distraction. Just a client emergency, I said. Small business websites, you know how it is. Diana laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. Oh, I remember those days. Staying up late, worrying about tiny projects. But that's the difference between us, isn't it? I always aimed higher. I typed a quick response. Send everything. Meeting at 9 a.m. The truth about Shadowbox Digital was known to very few people. On paper, we were a small web development firm. In reality, we were a cybersecurity powerhouse operating through a complex network of shell companies and subsidiaries. Our real headquarters occupied 3 floors of a downtown high-rise, employing over 200 of the best programmers and security experts in the business. More importantly, we had spent the last year quietly acquiring shares in Sterling Tech through various front companies. Diana's revolutionary security platform was built on fundamental flaws that would soon become very public. Her company's value was about to plummet unless someone stepped in to save it. That someone was Shadowbox Digital. Another glass, Diana? Our mother offered, reaching for the wine bottle. Why not? Diana beamed. We should celebrate success when we see it. Speaking of which, Meera, if you ever want some advice on growing your business, I'd be happy to help. Sterling's smallest division probably handles more money than your entire company. I checked my phone again. Our latest valuation had just come in, $2.3 billion. Sterling Tech's entire market cap was less than half that. That's kind of you, I said mildly. Actually, I do have some meetings about expansion tomorrow. Oh. Diana's eyebrows rose with exaggerated interest. Finally moving to a bigger office, maybe hiring a second employee. Our father chuckled. Now, Diana, be nice. Not everyone can be as successful as you. I thought about the stack of documents waiting in my real office, merger agreements, board approvals, and most satisfyingly, the papers that would make me Diana's boss. By this time tomorrow, Sterling Tech would be a subsidiary of Shadowbox Digital. You're right, I said, standing up. I should probably get home. Big day tomorrow. Deanna raised her glass in a mock toast to small victories and modest ambitions. As I drove home, I thought about the moment 5 years ago when I decided to keep Shadowbox's true nature a secret from my family. It was at another dinner, just after Diana had launched Sterling Tech. She had spent the entire evening talking about her vision, her brilliance, her destiny to dominate the industry. I had tried to discuss my own plans for an innovative approach to cybersecurity. Diana had cut me off mid-sentence. "Oh, honey," she'd said, patting my hand. "Security tech is so complex. Why don't you stick to something simple, like building websites? Know your limitations." So I did exactly what she suggested. On the surface, I created a small web development firm as Shadowbox's public face. I took an office in a modest building, hired a few local developers to maintain the facade, and behind the scenes, I built something far bigger than Diana could imagine. My phone buzzed again as I pulled into my garage. Another message from my COO. Final confirmation from their board. They have no idea who's really buying them. You should see their org chart for the merged company. They have you listed as reporting to Diana. I smiled, thinking of tomorrow's meeting. Diana's face when she realized that her tiny startup sister was about to become her boss would be priceless. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's letting them think they're right until the perfect moment to show them just how wrong they've been. The next morning, I stood in my real office, 40 floors above the city. The small web design office my family knew about was visible from here, a perfect metaphor for how they had always underestimated me. "Ready?" My COO, James, appeared at my door. Sterling's executive team just arrived. They're in the main conference room. I smoothed my designer suit, a far cry from the casual attire I wore to family dinners. "Is Diana here yet?" "Just walked in. You should see her face trying to figure out why the merger meeting is being held at a company she's never heard of." I smiled, picking up my tablet. The last 5 years had been building to this moment. When I entered the conference room, Diana was standing at the window, her back to the door. She turned, recognition and confusion flooding her face. "Mira, what are you doing here? This is a private meeting." I walked to the head of the table, setting down my tablet. "Actually, I called this meeting." Deanna laughed, but it sounded forced. "Don't be ridiculous. I'm here to meet with the CEO of Atlas Dynamics." Atlas Dynamics was one of Shadowbox's many shell companies, the one we used to negotiate the merger. Atlas Dynamics is a subsidiary of Shadowbox Digital, I said calmly, nodding to James to start the presentation. "My company." The room fell silent. Diana's face went through a rapid series of emotions: confusion, disbelief, dawning horror. "That's impossible," she finally managed. "Shadowbox is a tiny web design company. You build websites for restaurants." "That's our public face," I agreed. "But perhaps you should have looked more closely at who's been acquiring Sterling Tech shares over the past year, or who sent you that security audit warning last month, the one you dismissed because it came from a tiny consulting firm." Deanna's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the polished floor. "No." I clicked through to the first slide, displaying Shadowbox's true organizational structure. Shadowbox Digital is the parent company of 7 technology firms, including Atlas Dynamics. We specialize in advanced cybersecurity solutions, with a current market valuation of $2.3 billion. The Sterling Tech board members were shuffling through their papers, whispering among themselves. Diana remained frozen, staring at the org chart. "As of this morning," I continued, "we own 51% of Sterling Tech's shares. This meeting isn't to negotiate a merger. It's to announce one." "You can't do this," Diana whispered. "Actually, I can. Your board has already approved the deal. They were quite eager to accept our offer, especially after we demonstrated the critical security flaws in your new platform." Diana's face flushed red. "Those warnings came from you?" "We tried to tell you privately. You chose not to listen." I turned to address the broader room. "Sterling Tech will become a division of Shadowbox Digital. We'll fix the security issues, integrate the salvageable technology, and restructure the management team." "Restructure?" Diana's voice cracked. "I'm the CEO." "Not anymore." I slid a document across the table. "Your resignation letter is already prepared. Don't worry, your golden parachute is quite generous. The next hour was a blur of signatures, legal requirements, and shocked silence. Diana sat in her chair, seemingly unable to process what was happening. Finally, as the board members filed out, she turned to me. "Why?" she asked. "Why go to all this trouble? Why pretend to be small?" I sat on the edge of the conference table. "Do you remember 5 years ago when you told me to know my limitations? You, Mom, Dad, you all decided what I was capable of without ever bothering to find out what I was actually doing. So this is revenge." "No," I corrected her. "This is business. Sterling Tech is a good acquisition for us, despite its flaws. The fact that it happens to be deeply satisfying is just a bonus." My phone buzzed. A message from our mother. Diana just called in tears. "What's going on? What have you done?" I showed the message to Diana. "They still think you're the successful one. Should we go tell them together?" The family dinner that night was very different from the previous one. I sat at the same table, but now Diana was the quiet one, pushing food around her plate. "I don't understand," our father kept saying. "How could Shadowbox be worth billions? You work in that tiny office downtown." "That's just for local web design clients," I explained. "Our real headquarters is the Hamilton Tower. You can see my office from here. Top 10 floors, north side." Our mother reached for her wine glass with trembling hands. "But Diana, Sterling Tech will be well taken care of as part of Shadowbox," I assured her. "Though Diana has chosen to step down as CEO." "Stepping down is a polite way to put it," Diana muttered. "You could have warned us," our father said accusingly. "All these years pretending to run a small business." I raised an eyebrow. "Would you have believed me? You never bothered to ask about my work, except to compare it unfavorably to Diana's." The silence that followed was heavy with realization. Years of assumptions, dismissals, and condescension hung in the air between us. Finally, Diana spoke. "I underestimated you. We all did." "Yes," I agreed. "You did." In the months that followed, Sterling Tech was integrated into Shadowbox. The security flaws were fixed, the technology improved, and the company flourished under new management. Diana took a job with a smaller tech firm, hopefully having learned something about humility. Our parents stopped comparing us, though they still struggled to understand how their underachieving daughter built a billion-dollar company right under their noses. As for me, I kept the small web design office downtown. It serves as a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that sometimes the best success is the kind no one sees coming. Occasionally, I drive past it on my way to my real office, remembering Diana's words. Such a tiny startup. I smile every time, because sometimes the best response to being underestimated isn't to prove people wrong. It's to let them keep believing they're right until the perfect moment to show them just how wrong they've been. These days, when people ask about my path to success, I tell them the truth. Sometimes the biggest achievements start with a small facade and a lot of patience. And sometimes the sweetest victory isn't in proving others wrong, but in watching them realize how wrong they've been all along. I still remember the day I first saw Cedar Grove Manor. I was 12 years old, riding my bike past the old Victorian mansion on Hampton Hill. Even then, with its peeling paint and overgrown gardens, I knew it was special. Every Sunday afternoon, I'd stop at its rusty gates, imagining how beautiful it could be if someone just gave it a chance. 20 years later, I finally had that chance. After a decade of hard work as an architectural historian and careful shading, I had enough for a down payment. When Cedar Grove went up for sale, I was the first to make an offer. "It's a money pit," my sister Madeline said over dinner at our parents' house. "You're crazy to want that old wreck." I tried to explain my vision. "The original woodwork is intact. The foundation is solid. Yes, it needs work, but..." "What Madeline means," Mom interrupted, "is that it's not a suitable home for someone in your position. You're single, no children. What do you need all that space for?" Dad nodded in agreement. "It's not practical, Alice. Let someone with a family buy it." Someone like Madeline, they meant. My perfect sister with her perfect husband and 2.5 perfect children. The daughter could follow Dad into law instead of wasting time studying old buildings like me. But I stood firm. My offer was accepted, and I spent every free moment planning the restoration. Every original feature would be preserved, every modern update carefully integrated to maintain the house's historic character. Then came the call that changed everything. We need to discuss the house, Dad said, his lawyer voice in full effect. Come over tonight. I arrived to find Madeline already there, sitting in her usual place at the family dinner table. The smile on her face sent warning signals through my mind. There's been a development, Dad began. The current owners of Cedar Grove, they're old clients of mine. We've come to an arrangement that benefits everyone. My stomach dropped. What kind of arrangement? Well, Mom beamed, since Madeline and Jack need more space with a new baby coming and you're still single. We're buying the house, Madeline announced. Dad worked it out. Isn't it perfect? The kids will have so much room to play. I stared at them, unable to process what I was hearing. But my offer was accepted. I have a contract. Had a contract, Dad corrected. I spoke with George Thompson, he owns the property. Explained the situation. He agreed to void your contract and sell to us instead. To Madeline, I said numbly. Same thing, dear, Mom smiled. We're family after all. But it wasn't the same thing, not even close. I spent months planning the restoration. I protested. I've researched the history, consulted with preservationists. Oh, we won't be keeping all that old stuff. Madeline waved her hand dismissively. Jack's already talked to contractors about modernizing. Open concept, you know. Those old walls have to go. Each word felt like a physical blow. They were going to destroy everything that made Cedar Grove special, everything I had dreamed of preserving. You can't, I whispered. Actually, Dad cleared his throat. We can. The sale's already gone through. Madeline and Jack are the new owners. I looked at him sharply. That fast? How? We expedited things, he said smoothly, given the circumstances. Something in his tone made me pause. Dad was using his courtroom voice, the one that always hid something. What circumstances? Well, Mom jumped in. Madeline needs the space more than you do. She has a family to think about. And since you're doing so well in your career, the pause before career spoke volumes about her opinion of my profession. So you just took it? Just like that? Don't be dramatic, Madeline sighed. We didn't take anything. We bought it fairly. For how much? The silence that followed was deafening. That's not important, Dad said finally. How much? Madeline examined her manicure. $1. The room spun. $1. You bought my dream home for $1. It's a common practice, Dad began, but I cut him off. Common practice? To void my legitimate contract and sell a historic property worth millions for $1. The exact terms are complicated, he said stiffly. There were other considerations. Like what? That's privileged information between myself and my client. I stood up so quickly my chair fell backward. Your client? You mean you represented both sides of this transaction? Isn't that a conflict of interest? Sit down, Alice, Mom snapped. You're making a scene. But I was done sitting down. Done being the good daughter who accepted their decisions without question. You know what the worst part is? I said quietly, not that you took my dream away. Not even that you gave it to Madeline for nothing. It's that you really believe you did nothing wrong. We did what was best for the family, Dad insisted. No, I corrected him. You did what was best for your favorite daughter. Like always. I walked out of their house that night and didn't look back. Let them have their family dinners without me. Let them congratulate themselves on how cleverly they'd manage everything. But something nagged at me. The speed of the transaction. Dad's careful evasions about the other considerations. The fact that George Thompson, who'd been so enthusiastic about my restoration plans, had suddenly changed his mind. It took 3 months of research and calling in every professional favor I had, but I finally found what they tried to hide. The truth about Cedar Grove Manor, and why they'd been so desperate to get it for Madeline before anyone else could look too closely. My phone rang as I sat in my apartment, surrounded by property records and historical documents. It was my friend Lisa at the county records office. You were right, she said without preamble. There's something very wrong with that sale, and it goes back a lot further than your sister's purchase. I looked at the papers spread across my desk, decades of ownership records, building permits, and something else. Something that would change everything. How bad? I asked. Bad enough that when this comes out, your father could be disbarred. And that's just the beginning. I smiled, thinking of Madeline's smug face as she announced her ownership of my dream home, of Dad's careful legal maneuvering. of Mom's dismissal of my dramatic reaction. They thought they'd won. They thought they'd put me in my place once and for all. But they didn't know what I discovered. They didn't know that Cedar Grove Manor held secrets worth far more than its architectural heritage. And they certainly didn't know that their perfect $1 deal was about to become the most expensive mistake they ever made. 3 weeks after my discovery, I sat in the office of District Attorney Helen Martinez, watching her face as she reviewed the documents I'd gathered. She paused, shaking her head. This is unprecedented. Are you sure about these findings? I nodded, opening another folder. The original land grant from 1872, the trust documents from 1923, the preservation covenant from 1955. And here, I pulled out the key document, the Federal Historic Site designation that was mysteriously lost in 1985. When your father became George Thompson's attorney, Helen finished. Exactly. They've been hiding this for decades. Every sale, every transfer of Cedar Grove Manor has been illegal since then. The truth had been buried in layers of legal paperwork and conveniently missing documents. Cedar Grove wasn't just a historic house. It was a federally protected landmark. More importantly, it was held in perpetual trust for the preservation of its architectural and historical significance. No one could actually own it. No one could modify it. And certainly no one could sell it for $1 to tear out its historic features. Your father, Helen said carefully, as Mr. Thompson's attorney, would have known all this. Oh, he knew. That's why they rushed Madeline's purchase through before I could dig too deeply. My restoration plans would have drawn attention from preservation societies. Questions would have been asked. Instead, they sold it to your sister, who planned to modernize it, effectively destroying the evidence of its historic status in the process. I smiled grimly, except they didn't count on me being quite so good at my job. Architectural historian, remember, the one they all dismissed as having a useless career? Helen gathered the documents carefully. We'll need statements, witnesses. This goes beyond just your family. There's decades of fraud here, involving multiple parties. I have everything you need, I assured her, including emails between my father and George Thompson discussing how to keep the property's true status hidden. How did you get those? Let's just say Mr. Thompson's grandson owes me a favor. He wasn't happy to learn his grandfather had been lying to him about his inheritance rights for 30 years. The next morning, as I was reviewing more documents in my apartment, my phone exploded with notifications. The story had broken. Historic Cedar Grove Manor Center of FRADD investigation. Local ATJORNEUI I see his disbarment over decades long PROPR2I CEGME. Federal authorities seize illegally sold historic landmark. Then came the calls. First, Madeline, hysterical. They're making us move out. They've frozen our accounts. What's happening? Then Mom, alternating between tears and threats. What have you done? Your own family? Finally Dad, his lawyer voice cracking. Alice, we need to talk. Whatever you think you know. I let them all go to voicemail. Instead, I drove to Cedar Grove, parking across the street to watch the chaos unfold. Federal agents swarmed the property. Preservation experts documented every illegal modification. Journalists gathered at the gates, cameras flashing. A familiar figure stormed out the front door. Madeline, designer handbag clutched like a shield, mascara running. You can't do this, she screamed at the federal marshals. We own this house. We paid for it. You paid $1, I said, finally stepping forward. For a property that was never for sale in the first place. She spun toward me, face contorted with rage. You did this. No, Madeline, you all did this. You and Dad and George Thompson. 40 years of fraud, all because you couldn't stand the idea of playing by the rules. It's just an old house. It's a federally protected landmark held in perpetual trust for historical preservation, something Dad knew perfectly well when he helped George Thompson start falsifying documents in 1985. Your father, a new voice interrupted, has bigger problems than real estate fraud at the moment. Helen Martinez approached, flanked by federal agents. We've just executed a search warrant at his office. The Cedar Grove documents were just the beginning. Care to guess what else we found? I could guess. Dad's careful arrangements for special clients hadn't started or ended with Cedar Grove. You've destroyed this family, Madeline spat. No, I corrected her. I exposed the truth. There's a difference. Later that evening, as the sun set behind Cedar Grove's distinctive turrets, I stood in what would have been my library. The room was half demolished, Madeline's modernization arrested mid-destruction. Miss Harrison. A preservation expert approached, carrying blueprints. We found your restoration plans in the county archives. The trust board is very impressed. They'd like to talk to you about overseeing the rehabilitation. I touched the original walnut paneling, still perfect under decades of neglect. What about my father's legal issues? That's out of our hands, but given your role in exposing the fraud and your obvious commitment to historic preservation. I smiled. When do we start? Over the next year, Cedar Grove transformed. Not into Madeline's modernized showpiece, but into the carefully restored historic landmark it was always meant to be. Every detail I dreamed of preserving was brought back to life. Dad was disbarred, his other arrangements for special clients coming to light one by one. Madeline and Jack, their assets frozen pending investigation, moved in with Mom. George Thompson faced federal charges. And me? I was appointed permanent curator of Cedar Grove Manor, living in the caretaker's cottage and overseeing its preservation for future generations. Was it worth it? Lissa asked one evening as we sat in the restored garden. Going up against your whole family? I looked at the house, glowing in the sunset. Every window restored, every architectural detail preserved. Inside, tourists and history students explored rooms that told stories spanning centuries. They thought they were punishing me, I said finally, selling my dream house to Madeline for $1. But they never understood what made it valuable in the first place. The historical significance. That too, but mainly the truth. Cedar Grove's truth had been buried under decades of lies, just waiting for someone to care enough to dig it up. My phone buzzed, another message from Mom, probably. They still tried to contact me sometimes when they needed money or wanted to explain. I'd stop listening to the explanations. You know what the best revenge is? I asked Lisa. What's that? I smiled, watching a group of architecture students sketching Cedar Grove's distinctive features, living well in the house they tried to steal, knowing that their $1 deal cost them everything. The next morning, I found an envelope in my office. Inside was a single document, the original dollar bill Madeline had used to buy Cedar Grove. Across it, someone had written, "Some things are worth more than money." I pinned it to my bulletin board next to my preservation awards and the newspaper article about the fraud investigation. A reminder that sometimes justice comes not in the form of revenge, but in the simple triumph of truth over lies. They had tried to take my dream and give it to Madeline for $1. Instead, they had given me something far more valuable, the chance to protect Cedar Grove forever, ensuring that no one else could ever treat it as a mere commodity to be bought and sold. That was worth more than any dollar they could ever spend. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, heavy cream-colored paper with gold embossing announcing the Morrison family's annual reunion. I stared at it, running my fingers over the raised letters while memories of past humiliations played through my mind like a worn-out film reel. My name is Olivia Morrison, but these days I go by Liv Carter in the business world. 10 years ago, I was the family's greatest disappointment, the girl who walked away from our family's banking empire to pursue foolish dreams of working in hospitality. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. My cousin Diana's name flashed on the screen. I already knew why she was calling. Olivia. Her voice dripped with artificial sweetness. I assume you received the invitation. I did. Well, darling, I'm calling to let you know that perhaps it's best if you skip this year's reunion. The Starlight Grand is quite exclusive. The required attire alone. I glanced out my office window at the Manhattan skyline, suppressing a smile. The Starlight Grand, my flagship hotel, though the Morrison family didn't know that. They had no idea that LC Hotels, the fastest-growing luxury hotel chain in the country, belonged to their poor relation. Are you saying I can't afford it, Diana? Oh, don't be dramatic. It's just that, well, we have some very important guests coming. The governor, several CEOs. We can't have anyone feeling uncomfortable. By anyone, she meant herself. Heaven forbid her successful friends discover her cousin worked in customer service. What would they think? I see I kept my voice neutral. And who chose the venue? I did, of course. Pride filled her voice. Daddy says I have excellent taste. The Starlight Grand is the most prestigious hotel in Manhattan. I had to pull some serious strings to book it for our reunion. I bit back a laugh. Diana hadn't pulled any strings. Her request had come through our regular booking channels, and I personally approved it last week. In fact, I'd given them a special rate, about 30% higher than our standard fee. That must have been difficult, I said mildly. Well, not everyone has my connections. The owner, L.C. Carter, is notoriously private, but her staff was quite accommodating once they heard the Morrison name. Of course they were. I'd instructed them to be. How interesting. Anyway, Diana continued, I'm sure you understand. Perhaps next year, if your situation improves. Are you still working at that little hotel in Brooklyn? The little hotel she referred to was actually my test property, where I developed and refined the service innovations that had made LC Hotels famous in the hospitality industry. But the Morrisons had stopped paying attention to my career years ago. Something like that, I replied. After hanging up, I sat back in my leather chair, memories washing over me. 10 years ago, I'd been fresh out of Cornell's hotel administration program, eager to learn the business from the ground up. My family had been horrified. A hotel clerk? My father had roared. No daughter of mine will wear a name tag and carry luggage. But I'd stuck to my plan, working every position from housekeeper to front desk manager. I learned every aspect of the business, identifying problems and innovating solutions. Within 3 years, I'd opened my first property under the LC Hotels banner. Now, at 32, I own 17 luxury hotels across 3 continents. The Starlight Grand, my Manhattan flagship, had revolutionized the industry with its blend of classic luxury and cutting-edge technology. The same family that had once mocked my career choice now considered it the height of prestige to hold their reunion there. My phone buzzed, a text from my assistant, Marcus. The Morrison family reunion contract needs your final signature. Shall I bring it up? I smiled, typing back, no need. I have plans for this one. Opening my laptop, I began making arrangements. If my family wanted to ban me from the reunion for being too poor, they were in for quite a surprise. The Starlight Grand was about to host a revelation none of them would ever forget. Memories flooded back as I worked. Every snide comment, every dismissive glance, every family gathering where I was seated at the far end of the table, away from the successful relatives. Diana's wedding 3 years ago had been the worst. She'd seated me with the catering staff, telling everyone it was so I feel more comfortable with my own kind. The fact that I'd already owned 12 hotels by then didn't matter. They'd never bothered to look beyond their own assumptions. My sister Madeline had been the only one to stay in touch, though even she didn't know the full extent of my success. She called just as I was finalizing the arrangements. Liv, Diana called me. She said she had to uninvite you from the reunion. I'm so sorry. Don't be, I replied, signing the last document with a flourish. Actually, I have a favor to ask. Could you make sure everyone arrives exactly at 7 p.m.? It's important. Why? What are you planning? Let's just say Diana isn't the only one with connections at the Starlight Grand. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. I personally supervised every detail, from the menu to the floral arrangements. The Morrison family wanted luxury. I would give them a show they'd never forget. The night before the reunion, I stood in the hotel's grand lobby, watching the staff polish every surface to a mirror shine. The crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and the marble floors gleamed like sheets of ice. Everything was perfect. Marcus appeared at my side, tablet in hand. All arrangements are in place. The new signage will be unveiled at exactly 7:15 p.m. tomorrow. Are you sure about this? I nodded, thinking of Diana's condescending phone call, of years of subtle and not so subtle humiliation. Absolutely sure. After all, it's not every day I get to welcome my family to my hotel. I smiled, imagining their faces when they realized the truth. Tomorrow would change everything, and I was ready. At precisely 6:45 p.m. on the evening of the reunion, I stood in my private office on the top floor of the Starlight Grand, watching the Morrison family arrive through the security feeds. They came in waves of designer clothes and expensive jewelry, each trying to outshine the other. Diana swept in wearing Valentino, directing staff like she owned the place. My father's Bentley pulled up to the valet station, followed by a stream of luxury cars carrying aunts, uncles, and cousins I hadn't seen in years. Everything's ready, Marcus said, adjusting his tablet. The staff knows their cues. Should I have security on standby? I shook my head. No need. The Morrisons care too much about appearances to make a scene in public. I smoothed down my custom-made suit, Armani, though they wouldn't expect me to know the difference. Let's give them time to settle in. Through the cameras, I watched my family members gather in the grand ballroom. Diana held court near the champagne fountain, loudly explaining how she pulled strings to secure the venue. My father stood with his business associates, probably discussing the latest banking merger. Even my distant cousins were there, all carefully positioned to show off their perceived status. At 7:10 p.m., right on schedule, the hotel manager approached Diana with the first hint that something was amiss. Ms. Morrison? I'm afraid there's been a slight issue with the reservation. Diana's face darkened. What kind of issue? I personally arrange everything with your corporate office. Yes, ma'am. It's just that the owner has some specific requests regarding tonight's event. The owner? Diana laughed dismissively. I seriously doubt Elsie Carter concerns herself with individual events. Now, if you'll excuse me. Actually, I said, stepping into the ballroom. Elsie Carter concerns herself with quite a lot of things. The silence that fell over the room was absolute. Every head turned toward me, the uninvited relative, the family embarrassment, standing in the doorway of Manhattan's most prestigious hotel wearing a suit that cost more than Diana's car. Olivia, my father's voice carried across the room. What are you doing here? Diana said. Diana said I couldn't afford to attend. I finished for him, walking slowly into the center of the room. She was concerned I might embarrass the family. Diana stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. This is a private event. I'll have security remove you. No, I cut her off, you won't. On cue, Marcus pressed a button on his tablet. The massive screen behind the stage lit up with the hotel's logo, and beneath it my full name. Olivia Morrison Carter, founder and CEO, LC Hotels International. The gasps were audible. Diana's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. That's not possible, she stammered. Would you like to see my business cards? I asked sweetly. Or perhaps the deed to the building. I have those right here. I patted the leather portfolio under my arm. My father pushed through the crowd, his face a mix of shock and something else. Was it pride? You own the Starlight Grand? And 16 other properties across 3 continents, I confirmed. Though this one is special. It's where I started my career, as a junior housekeeper, while all of you were laughing at my foolish career choice. The memory surfaced again. Diana mocking my name tag, my aunts whispering about wasted potential, my cousins excluding me from family photos because I didn't fit the image. All those years, I continued, my voice carrying in the stunned silence. While you were so busy looking down on me, you never bothered to look up, to see what I was building. The little hotel in Brooklyn Diana loves to joke about? It's my innovation lab, where we develop the systems that have revolutionized the luxury hotel industry. Marcus stepped forward, distributing folders to key family members. Inside you'll find the true story of LC Hotels, along with documentation of your rather interesting booking for tonight's event. Diana snatched her folder, her hands shaking as she opened it. Her eyes widened at the numbers. This can't. The rate you charge us is about 30% above our standard fee, I confirmed. Consider it a family discount, in reverse. My sister Madeline burst out laughing from somewhere in the crowd. Others joined in nervously, unsure whether they were allowed to find humor in the situation. Why didn't you tell us? My father demanded. Would you have believed me? I asked simply. 10 years ago, you told me no daughter of yours would ever work in a hotel. Well, you were right about one thing. I don't work in a hotel. I own them. The screens around the ballroom came to life, showing images of my properties around the world. The sunset view from our Maldives resort, the snow-capped peaks surrounding our Swiss chateau, the glittering skyline visible from every room of our Dubai tower. As for tonight's reunion, I continued, your reservation hasn't been canceled. You're welcome to stay. In fact, I've arranged a special tour of the property. I think it's time you saw what a career in customer service really looks like. Diana stepped forward, her composure cracking. Olivia, we never met. Yes, you did. I cut her off gently. You meant every snide comment, every exclusion, every moment of mockery. But that's okay, because while you were also busy maintaining appearances, I was building something real. I turned to the assembled crowd, raising my voice slightly. Welcome to the Starlight Grand. My staff will show you to your upgraded suites, though I'm afraid Diana's room had to be downgraded due to a last-minute VIP booking. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Diana's face flushed deep red as she realized she'd be staying in the same category of room she'd once mocked me for cleaning. As the family dispersed, guided by my impeccably trained staff, my father lingered behind. I was wrong, he said quietly, about everything. I studied him for a moment, seeing for the first time uncertainty in his eyes. Yes, you were. But would you like to know the best part about owning 17 hotels, Dad? He raised an eyebrow questioningly. I have 17 different presidential suites where you can stay while you figure out how to make things right. A small smile cracked his serious expression. Where did you learn to negotiate like that? Probably the same place I learned about hospitality, by starting at the bottom and working my way up. Something this family never understood. Later that night, after the tours were complete and the family had settled into their rooms, Diana's notably smaller than the others, I stood in my private penthouse looking out over the city. Marcus brought in the final numbers for the evening. Your family seems subdued, he observed. I laughed. Amazing what a little perspective can do. Did you see Diana's face when she realized her room doesn't have a city view? Are you going to tell them about the expansion? The new properties in Paris and Tokyo. I smiled, thinking of the contracts sitting on my desk. The Starlight Grand was just the beginning. Let's save something for next year's reunion. After all, every good hotelier knows the importance of repeat business. As the city lights twinkled below, I thought about the long journey from that first day as a housekeeper to this moment. Success wasn't about proving them wrong, it was about proving myself right. And sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with a complimentary upgrade and a spectacular view. My phone buzzed with a text from Diana. Can we talk tomorrow? Please? I typed back a simple response. Of course. I believe your breakfast reservation is at 9 a.m. I own that restaurant too. Sometimes the greatest luxury isn't in the thread count of the sheets or the height of the ceiling. It's in the simple pleasure of finally being seen for who you really are. And as I looked out over my hotel empire, I knew that tomorrow would bring a new chapter in the Morrison family story. After all, every great hotel knows that the key to success isn't just in providing a room, it's in creating an experience they'll never forget. You'll need to wear this. My sister Vanessa tossed a butler's uniform onto my bed, not even bothering to look me in the eye. The resort staff is short-handed, and since you work in hospitality, you can make yourself useful. I picked up the pressed black uniform, fighting to keep my expression neutral. If she only knew that I wasn't just in hospitality, I owned a Crystal Cove resort, along with 12 other luxury properties around the world. You want me to serve drinks at your wedding? I kept my voice steady, though my hands wanted to shake. Well, it's not like you can afford to be a proper guest, Michael. She smoothed her designer dress, checking her reflection in my bedroom mirror. Besides, Daddy says it's good for you to understand your place. Some people are meant to serve, others to be served. I thought about the deed to the $300 million resort sitting in my office safe, about the staff of 200 who actually worked for me, about the fact that Vanessa had practically begged for a last-minute booking at my most exclusive property. But she didn't know any of that. None of them did. 10 years ago, I'd walked away from the family's investment firm to pursue my dreams in the hospitality industry. A disgrace, my father had called me. No son of mine will be a bellhop. What they never understood was that I hadn't wanted to be a bellhop. I'd wanted to revolutionize the entire luxury hotel industry. While they were busy looking down their noses at service workers, I was learning every aspect of the business, identifying problems, and creating solutions that would eventually make me a fortune. The wedding starts at 6, Vanessa continued, checking her phone. Be there by 4 to help set up. And Michael? She finally turned to look at me. Try not to embarrass me. These are very important people attending. I bit back a laugh. Those very important people were mostly my clients, CEOs, celebrities, and politicians who regularly stayed at my properties. They knew me as Michael Chen, the reclusive owner of Crystal Cove Resorts International. None of them had any idea I was related to the bride. I'll do my best, I said mildly. After she left, I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. The wedding contract was still open. Vanessa had nearly cried when she called begging for a venue after her original location fell through. The Crystal Cove Resort usually booked 2 years in advance, but I'd made an exception. Your family name carries weight, my events manager had told her, following my script perfectly. Mr. Chen has approved your booking personally. She preened at that, assuming it was our family's reputation in finance that had opened the doors. The irony was almost too perfect. My phone buzzed, a text from my assistant David. Everything's set for tomorrow. Staff briefed and sworn to secrecy. Are you sure about this? I thought about all the family gatherings where I'd been seated at the children's table well into my 30s, about the client meetings where my father had introduced me as our family's hospitality expert with a smirk, about Vanessa's constant reminders that I was the family disappointment. Absolutely sure, I typed back. Make sure the uniforms are ready. The next morning, I arrived at the resort through the service entrance, carrying the butler's uniform Vanessa had given me. My staff, played along perfectly, treating me like a new hire, showing me where to store my belongings. Mr. Chen, my head of security, whispered as I passed. The cameras are all set. We'll capture every moment. I nodded slightly. I wanted a record of this day, not for revenge, but for remembrance. Sometimes the best lessons come wrapped in humble packages. The resort was in full wedding mode. Flowers worth more than most cars filled the grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and an army of staff moved with practiced precision to prepare for the evening's events. My father arrived around noon, barking orders at the staff like he owned the place. I watched from behind a service door as he complained about the champagne selection, the same vintage I knew he served at his own parties. Don't you have anything better? He demanded of the sommelier. This is a Crawford family wedding. Do you know who we are? The sommelier, who knew exactly who I was, kept his face professionally blank. I'll check with management, sir. My mother appeared next, fussing over every detail with the wedding planner. She passed me twice without a second glance, her own son, invisible in a butler's uniform. By 4 o'clock, guests began arriving. I recognized most of them, not just as family members, but as clients. The CEO of Atlantic Industries, who had just booked my Maldives property for his anniversary. The media mogul who held his annual board meetings at my Swiss resort. The tech billionaire who liked to joke that he'd buy Crystal Cove Resorts one day, not knowing he was talking to its owner. Michael. Vanessa's sharp voice cut through my observations. Stop standing around and make yourself useful. The guests need drinks. I picked up a silver tray of champagne flutes, moving smoothly through the crowd as I'd seen my staff do countless times. Each guest took a glass without really seeing me, exactly as my family had done for years. My cousin Peter, who'd recently made partner at his father's law firm, actually snapped his fingers at me. Hey you, we need more ice at table 3. I fought back a smile, remembering how he asked to handle the legal work for Crystal Cove Resorts last month. I had my corporate office send him a polite rejection. As the evening progressed, I played my role perfectly. I served drinks, cleared plates, and stayed in the background. But I was watching, listening, gathering every condescending comment and dismissive gesture. The wedding ceremony was about to begin, and soon, very soon, they would all learn what it truly meant to understand one's place. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from David. The signs are ready, on your signal. I texted back a single word. Wait. The best revelations, like the best service, are all about timing. The wedding ceremony had just ended, and the reception was in full swing. Vanessa looked radiant in her designer gown, floating through the crowd like she owned the place. The irony wasn't lost on me as I continued my role as server, invisible yet seeing everything. I can't believe you managed to book the Crystal Cove Resort, one of her friends gushed. It's impossible to get a last-minute reservation here. Vanessa preened. Well, you know how it is. The Chen family has quite a reputation. When they heard our name, they practically begged us to hold the wedding here. I suppressed a smile as I refilled their champagne glasses. She had no idea how right she was about the Chen name, just the wrong Chen. Michael. My father's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. Stop dawdling and bring more wine to the head table, and try not to spill it this time. I hadn't spilled a drop all night, but that was beside the point. I collected a fresh bottle of the $1,000 wine I'd personally selected for the evening and made my way to the family table. You know, my father was saying loudly to his business associates, it's actually good that Michael ended up in service. Keeps him humble. Not everyone is cut out for real success. The men around him chuckled, swirling their expensive wine in crystal glasses that I had imported from Venice. My mother touched his arm gently. At least he's working, she said, though her tone suggested this was the barest minimum of achievement, unlike cousin Timothy, who still lives in his parents' basement. I checked my watch. Almost time. Hey, butler, Peter called out, snapping his fingers again. Tell the management we need better music. This playlist is amateur hour. I had personally curated the evening soundtrack, a mix of classical pieces performed by the London Symphony Orchestra, which I happened to sponsor. Of course, sir, I replied smoothly. I'll speak to the owner right away. Good luck with that, Vanessa laughed. Mr. Chen never shows his face. He's probably some old recluse who doesn't even know what's happening in his own hotel. That was my cue. I pulled out my phone and sent a single text to David. Now. The crystal chandeliers dimmed slightly and the massive screens around the ballroom flickered to life. The resort's logo appeared, followed by a message that made the room fall silent. Welcome to Crystal Cove Resort. A message from the owner. My father frowned. What's this? The screens shifted to show a series of photographs. Me signing the resort's purchase agreement, cutting the ribbon at our Dubai location, accepting Luxury Hotelier of the Year award. In each image, I was clearly recognizable as Michael Chen, owner and CEO of Crystal Cove Resorts International. The silence in the room was deafening. I removed the butler's jacket, revealing a perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit underneath. Actually, I said, raising my voice slightly, Mr. Chen is quite aware of everything that happens in his hotels. Vanessa's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. My father's face had gone pale, while Peter seemed to be choking on his wine. That's not possible, Vanessa stammered. Would you like to see the deed? I asked pleasantly, or perhaps the resort's financial statements. I believe you'll find everything in order. You own Crystal Cove Resorts? My father's voice was barely a whisper. All 13 properties, I confirmed. This one is special. It's where I first learned the meaning of true hospitality, something this family never quite understood. The screens now showed images of my other properties, the snow-capped peaks surrounding our Switzerland location, the pristine beaches of our Maldives resort, the glittering lights of our Singapore tower. While you were all busy mocking my career choice, I continued, I was building an empire, one that's now worth considerably more than Crawford Investment Group. That hit home. My father's company had been our family's source of pride for generations. The fact that I had surpassed it while playing the role of humble hotelier was almost too much for him to process. Why didn't you tell us? My mother asked, her voice small. Would you have believed me? I countered. 10 years ago, you said I was throwing my life away, that no son of yours would ever work in service. While you were right about one thing, I don't work in service. I revolutionized it. David appeared at my side, tablet in hand. Mr. Chen, the governor, is on line 1. Shall I tell him you're busy with a family matter? The room erupted in whispers. The same governor who had dismissed me as the help earlier was now asking for me by name. Michael. Vanessa stepped forward, her wedding dress rustling. I never meant, we didn't know. No, you didn't, I agreed. You were all too busy looking down to ever look up. But that's okay, because while you were focused on appearances, I was building something real. I turned to address the gathered guests, many of whom were my actual clients. Please enjoy the rest of the evening. The reception has been extended by 2 hours, with my compliments. Though I'm afraid I'll have to stop serving drinks personally. A ripple of nervous laughter went through the crowd. My father stood up, straightening his tie as if preparing for a business negotiation. Son, perhaps we should discuss this privately. Of course, I nodded. My office is just upstairs. Though you might remember it, you said the penthouse suite was wastefully large when you checked in yesterday. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. My father had spent 20 minutes complaining about my own office, not knowing he was standing in the headquarters of a billion-dollar company. As the party resumed, now with a very different energy, I caught snippets of conversation. He owns all of Crystal Cove, the most exclusive resort chain in the world. and they made him serve drinks. Later that night, after the guests had gone and Vanessa had retreated to her honeymoon suite, which I'd upgraded despite everything, I stood in my office overlooking the ocean. David brought in the final event report. "Your family seems subdued," he observed. "Amazing what a little perspective can do," I replied, thinking of Peter's stammered apology and my mother's tearful attempt at reconciliation. "Are you going to tell them about the new properties, the expansion into space tourism?" I smiled, thinking of the contract sitting on my desk. Crystal Cove was about to become the first luxury hotel chain to offer zero-gravity accommodations. "Let's save something for the next family gathering," I said. After all, every good hotelier knows the importance of repeat business. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. "Can we talk tomorrow?" I typed back, "Of course. I believe you're booked for breakfast at the oceanfront restaurant. I own that too." Sometimes the greatest service you can provide is teaching others the true meaning of respect. And as I looked out over my resort, I knew that tomorrow would bring a new chapter in the Crawford family story. After all, success isn't about who you serve, it's about how you lead. And sometimes the best way to lead is to let others discover their own humility. Looking at the butler's uniform still draped over a chair, I couldn't help but smile. It had been worth playing the servant for one last evening, if only to teach my family that true dignity isn't about the uniform you wear, but the person you choose to be. The sun was setting over the ocean, casting a golden glow across the resort, my resort. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and perhaps even new beginnings with my family. But for now, I was content knowing that sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with impeccable style and a perfect view of the ocean. They say the deepest wounds come from family. Mine came on what should have been the proudest day of my life, my college graduation. I stood in our grand living room, still wearing my graduation gown, my summa cum laude honors cord glinting in the afternoon light. The house buzzed with guests, the air thick with the scent of expensive catering and even more expensive perfume. My father, Marcus Bennett, CEO of Bennett Industries, held court near the marble fireplace, champagne in hand. "And of course, Isabella will be following in my footsteps," he announced, gesturing to my older sister, already lined up for the executive training program. Pride radiated from his voice as Isabella preened under the attention, her designer dress probably worth more than my entire year's tuition. I lingered near the edge of the crowd, clutching my economics degree with honors, earned through countless sleepless nights and 3 part-time jobs. Not that anyone had noticed. To them, I was just Sophia, the second daughter, the afterthought. "What about Sophia?" someone asked. Another Bennett joining the company? The silence that followed felt like ice crawling down my spine. My father's face tightened, that familiar look of disappointment settling in. "Sophia." He swirled his champagne, not meeting my highs. "Well, she has different ideas about her future." Different. The word hung in the air like poison. What he meant was that I had refused to join Bennett Industries. Instead, I had accepted a junior position at a small tech startup, believing in their vision despite the lower starting salary. My mother, Victoria Bennett, stepped forward, her social mask firmly in place. "We tried our best with Sophia, but," she sighed dramatically, "sometimes our mistakes have minds of their own." The room went deadly quiet. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. "Mother," Isabella gasped, though I caught the slight smirk playing at her lips. Mistake. The word echoed in my head, burning into my memory. Years of being overlooked, of having my achievements dismissed, crystallized in that single moment. My father didn't contradict her. He simply took another sip of champagne, his silence an endorsement. Even the guests, these supposed family friends, just awkwardly looked away. I stood there frozen as the weight of that word crushed against my chest. Mistake. The magna cum laude honors meant nothing. The scholarships I'd earned, the internships I'd secured on my own merit, all meaningless to them. My Aunt Patricia, always quick to pile on, added with Fox sympathy, "At least Isabella makes up for it. A true Bennett through and through." That was the moment something inside me hardened. I carefully set down my graduation cap, straightened my shoulders, and walked to the door. No one tried to stop me. No one called my name. "Sophia," my father finally spoke as I reached for the handle. "Don't be dramatic. Your mother didn't mean." "Yes, she did." I cut him off, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "But that's okay. Your mistake is leaving. I walked out of that house and never looked back. They had no idea that their mistake had already been quietly building something revolutionary. The startup that offered me a job. I wasn't just joining as an employee. I was becoming a founding partner, bringing with me a revolutionary algorithm I developed during college. My family thought I was throwing away my future by not joining Bennett Industries. They didn't know that I was about to disrupt their entire industry. That was 10 years ago. Now, I sit in my penthouse office, watching the sun set over the city skyline. The word mistake no longer haunts me. Instead, it fuels me. My algorithm evolved into Mintex Solutions, a company that transformed how artificial intelligence is used in business. Last year, we went public with a valuation that made even tech giants take notice. The message notification on my phone pulls me from my thoughts. It's from my assistant. Ms. Bennett, your father is in the lobby. He says it's urgent. I smile slightly, remembering the last time I saw him. The great Marcus Bennett would never come to my office unless something was terribly wrong. After 10 years of silence, of pretending I didn't exist, he's here. And I know exactly why. Bennett Industries is failing. Their outdated technology can't compete in today's market. Their stock has been plummeting for months. They need a miracle. They need me. The mistake has become their last hope. I press the intercom, send him up. It's time to show them exactly what their mistake has become. But first, let them wait. Just like I did, all those years ago, waiting for their approval that never came. I turn back to the window, watching my reflection in the glass. The scared graduate in a polyester gown is gone, replaced by a woman in a tailored suit, CEO of a billion-dollar company. The intercom buzzes again. Your father is here. I straighten my jacket, a small smile playing at my lips. Give me 5 minutes. Let him sit there, in my waiting room, surrounded by magazine covers featuring my success. Let him realize that his mistake now has the power to either save or destroy everything he built. Sometimes the best revenge isn't serving cold justice, it's becoming exactly what they said you couldn't be. And I've become so much more than they ever imagined. I let exactly 7 minutes pass before opening my office door. My father sits in one of the leather chairs, his once immaculate suit slightly wrinkled, his confident posture replaced by something more desperate. The great Marcus Bennett looks old. Sophia. He stands, trying to summon his old authority. But in this office, my office, that power doesn't exist. Father. I stay behind my desk, gesturing to the chair. Please sit. He does, and for a moment, neither of us speaks. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sparkles beneath us. My empire, built without his name or connections. You look. He pauses, searching for words. You've done well for yourself. I raise an eyebrow. Is that why you're here? To comment on my appearance? He shifts uncomfortably, his eyes darting to the awards lining my walls, the magazine covers featuring my face. The latest one reads, Sophia Chen, the woman revolutionizing AI, Mintex's $12 billion innovation. Chen. I took my grandmother's maiden name after leaving. Another detail that must sting. Bennett Industries, he finally says, his voice catching. We're in trouble. I know. I keep my voice neutral. Your stock dropped 60% last quarter. Your technology is outdated. Major clients are leaving. I pull up a holographic display, his company's declining numbers floating between us. You need a miracle. We need Mintex's AI integration system, he admits. Without it, we'll be bankrupt within months. I stand, walking to the window. Below, the Bennett Industries building stands in the shadow of my headquarters, a fitting metaphor. And Isabella, your perfect hair, can't she save the company? His silence speaks volumes. Isabella, for all her executive training, couldn't adapt to the changing market. Her arrogance, so like our parents, blinded her to the technological revolution I saw coming years ago. He clears his throat. She resigned last week, moved to Europe with her husband. Of course she did. Isabella always knew how to abandon a sinking ship. Mother must be devastated, I say, not bothering to hide my sarcasm. Her perfect daughter, leaving her to deal with her. What was the word? Oh yes, mistake. Sophia, about that day. Save it. I turn back to face him. I'm not interested in apologies 10 years too late. He stands abruptly, desperation cracking his facade. What do you want? Money? A position on the board? Name your price. I laugh, the sound sharp in the quiet office. Money? Father, look around. I have more money than Bennett Industries ever had. My company's market cap is 12 times yours. Or rather, what's left of yours. Then what? His voice rises. What do you want? Nothing. I sit back down, perfectly calm. I don't want anything from you, not anymore. We'll lose everything, he whispers. The company, the house, our reputation. Your mother, this will destroy her. Like you tried to destroy me. He flinches. I pull out a folder, sliding it across the desk. But unlike you, I'm not cruel. Inside is an offer. Mindtech will acquire Bennett Industries, will integrate your remaining viable technology, retain 60% of your workforce, and provide you and mother with a comfortable retirement package. His hands shake as he opens the folder. This is a hostile takeover. No, Father. This is mercy. I stand again, my heels clicking on the marble floor as I walk around the desk. You have 24 hours to accept. After that, I'll offer the same deal to your board directly. They'll accept it, with or without your approval. You do this to your own family? Family? I lean against my desk, looking down at him. You made it very clear I wasn't family. I was a mistake, remember? He stares at the papers, decades of pride warring with desperation. And if I sign? Then the Bennett name survives, albeit under the Mindtech umbrella. You and mother keep your social standing, your country club memberships, your comfortable lifestyle. I smile slightly, without the power you're so accustomed to. The sun has fully set now, the office illuminated by the city lights below. In their glow, I see the moment my father finally understands. His mistake didn't just succeed, she surpassed everything he ever built. You planned this, he says slowly. All of it. No, Father, you did. The moment you and mother decided I wasn't good enough, you set this in motion. I walk to the door, opening it. 24 hours. Choose wisely. He stands, clutching the folder like a lifeline. At the door, he pauses. Your mother, she wants to see you. No, my voice is firm. The only contact from now on will be through lawyers. That's the price of your mistakes, not mine. After he leaves, I pour myself a glass of whiskey, the same brand he used to celebrate Isabella's achievements with. The irony doesn't escape me. My phone buzzes. A message from my head of acquisitions. Bennett Industries board is already calling. They want to know if we'll negotiate separately. I smile, remembering all the family dinners where I sat silently, watching them praise Isabella while ignoring my existence. The graduation party where they called me their mistake. The years of doubt and pain their words carved into my soul. Tell them we'll talk tomorrow, I reply. After Marcus Bennett learns what it feels like to be powerless in his own company, standing at my window, watching the city I now help shape, I raise my glass in a silent toast. The mistake they tried to erase now controls their fate. The daughter they dismiss now decides their future. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's becoming so powerful that they're forced to admit it themselves. The message I've been waiting for flashes on my screen. Bennett Industries stock suspended from trading. Markets expect imminent takeover. I close my eyes, letting 10 years of vindication wash over me. Tomorrow the business world will be abuzz with the news. Mindtech acquires Bennett Industries. They'll call it a strategic merger, a smart business move. But I know the truth. It's not just business. It's justice. And justice, like revenge, is best served by success. I pick up my phone, sending one final message to my father's number. The mistake says goodbye. Then I block his number, turn back to my empire, and finally completely let go of the girl who once desperately sought her family's approval. She doesn't exist anymore. In her place stands a woman who turned their greatest insult into her greatest triumph. And that's no mistake. Olivia's getting married. My mother's voice bubbled through the phone, dripping with the kind of enthusiasm she never wasted on me. She's marrying the CEO of Market Force Solutions. Can you believe it? My daughter marrying a CEO. I glanced at my computer screen at the acquisition papers I'd been reviewing before her call. Market Force Solutions, a mid-sized marketing firm that had been hemorrhaging money for the past year. Their CEO, James Warner, had been desperately seeking investors. That's wonderful, I said, keeping my voice neutral. If only they knew. The wedding will be at the Plaza Hotel, my mother continued. Though of course, we don't expect you to contribute to the costs. We know how tight money must be with your situation. My situation. That's what they called my choice to work at a small consulting firm instead of accepting the corporate job they'd lined up for me. Never mind that I built that small firm from nothing, carefully hiding my ownership behind layers of corporate structuring. I can manage, Mom. Oh, Sarah. Her sigh was heavy with disappointment. When are you going to get serious about your career? Look at Olivia, youngest senior VP at Anderson Corp, and now marrying a CEO. And you're still stuck in that dead-end job. I looked around my home office at the view of Central Park from my penthouse window and smiled slightly. Dead end indeed. The day of Olivia's engagement party arrived with all the subtlety of a Broadway production. The Morgan Hotel's ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and champagne flutes, each table setting probably worth more than what my family thought I made in a month. Sarah, Olivia's voice cut through the crowd. My sister approached in a designer dress that screamed new money, her diamond engagement ring catching the light. I didn't think you'd come, couldn't afford a new dress. I glanced down at my simple black dress, a custom piece that cost more than her ring. It's what I had. Well, she patted my arm condescendingly, at least you made an effort. Oh, let me introduce you to James. James Warner appeared at her side, his confident smile not quite hiding the worry lines around his eyes. I knew those worry lines intimately. I'd been watching his company's financial reports for months. Sarah, right? He extended his hand. Olivia's sister, the one who works at, what was it, honey? Some little consulting firm? Olivia waved dismissively. Nothing like market force. Speaking of which, James was just telling me about this amazing expansion plan. I took a sip of champagne, hiding my smile. There would be no expansion. Not under his leadership anyway. Sarah couldn't understand any of that business talk, Olivia continued. She's more of a small picture person. If she only knew that while she was planning her fairy tale wedding, I was planning the acquisition of her fiance's company. Phoenix Consulting Group, my company, had been watching Market Force Solutions for months. Their outdated methods and bloated management structure made them ripe for takeover. Actually, I said carefully, I'd love to hear about these expansion plans. James launched into his rehearsed speech about market penetration and synergistic opportunities. I nodded along, noting how he carefully avoided mentioning the company's plummeting stock price or the 3 failed product launches this year. Fascinating, I murmured, catching our mother's proud gaze fixed on Olivia. Isn't it? Olivia beamed. I'll be joining the board after the wedding. James says I have natural leadership abilities. Of course he did. He needed her family's connections. Our family's connections, though he didn't realize those connections now largely flow through me, not her. The party continued, a parade of designer labels and practiced laughs. Every few minutes, someone would congratulate Olivia on her brilliant match, while casting pitying glances my way. It's not too late, my father cornered me by the bar. I could still make some calls, get you a proper position somewhere. I smiled, remembering the stack of resumes on my desk. VPs and directors from top firms begging to work for Phoenix Consulting. I'm happy where I am, Dad. He shook his head. You could have been like Olivia. Instead, you're wasting your potential at some tiny firm that nobody's heard of. Nobody's heard of? I nearly laughed. Phoenix Consulting Group was the silent giant of the industry, working behind the scenes to reshape companies like Market Force. We just preferred to stay out of the spotlight. As I left the party that night, Olivia caught my arm. Sarah, I've been thinking. After the wedding, maybe I could help you find a real job. Something at Market Force, perhaps. Entry level, of course. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The designer dress, the perfect makeup, the practiced smile. She had everything she thought she wanted. She had no idea that in less than a month, at her own wedding, her perfectly planned world would shatter. Thanks, Olivia, I said softly, but I think I'll stick with what I have. Driving home in my sensible car, a carefully chosen prop to maintain my cover, I couldn't help but smile. Let them think I was stuck in a dead-end job. Let them pity the sister who couldn't make it. In my office, I opened my laptop and sent a simple email to my board. Proceed with the Market Force acquisition. Timeline, 3 weeks. Target, wedding day. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's letting them believe they're right until the perfect moment to show them just how wrong they've been. And Olivia's wedding would be that perfect moment. I picked up my phone and texted my assistant, "Send me everything we have on James Warner's recent meetings. And make sure our lawyers are ready." The pieces were in place. Now all I had to do was wait for the big day, my sister's dream wedding, where she discovered that her unsuccessful sister was about to become her boss. The irony was almost poetic. The Plaza Hotel ballroom looked like a scene from a fairy tale. White roses cascaded from crystal vases, champagne flowed endlessly, and my sister, radiant in her designer wedding gown, basked in the attention of 500 guests. I sat quietly at my assigned table, far from the main party, of course, watching the celebration unfold. My phone buzzed silently. The final confirmation from my lawyers. The Market Force acquisition was complete. All that remained was the announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen," James stood, tapping his champagne glass. "I'd like to propose a toast to my beautiful bride, who from today will not only be my wife, but also a key part of Market Force's future." The crowd applauded. Olivia beamed. "In fact," James continued, "I have an announcement to make. As of Monday, Olivia will be joining Market Force as our new Chief Marketing Officer." More applause. My mother wiped away tears of joy. My father puffed up with pride. I checked my watch. 3 minutes until the markets closed. 3 minutes until everything changed. Olivia stood now, her wedding dress shimmering. "Thank you all. I'm so excited to begin this new chapter, and I promise, under our leadership, Market Force will reach heights never before imagined." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. My phone buzzed again. The market had closed. The news would break any second. As if on cue, James's phone rang. He frowned, stepped away from the table. I watched his face change as he listened. Confusion, shock, disbelief. He ended the call, hands shaking. "James?" Olivia touched his arm. "What's wrong?" His voice cracked. "Market Force. We've been acquired. Phoenix Consulting Group. They bought controlling interest. But that's impossible." The deal wasn't. What it was," I said, standing. The room fell silent as I walked toward their table. The paperwork was finalized 20 minutes ago. James stared at me. How do you know?" I smiled, pulling a business card from my clutch. Not the simple one I usually carried, but my real card. The one that read, "Sarah Mitchell, CEO and founder, Phoenix Consulting Group." "No," Olivia whispered, her perfect makeup cracking as her eyes widened. "This is a joke. You work at some tiny consulting firm. You're nothing." "That tiny consulting firm?" I kept my voice level. "It was Phoenix. I built it from nothing while you were busy mocking my career choices. And now, well," I turned to James. "I believe you'll find your resignation letter in your email. The board has already accepted it." The ballroom erupted in whispers. My mother dropped her champagne glass. My father stood frozen, his face ashen. "You can't do this," Olivia shrieked. "This is my wedding. My moment." "Actually, I can. And that CMO position you were so excited about. The board has some concerns about nepotism. We'll be going in a different direction." James slumped in his chair, all pretense of power gone. "The expansion plans, the strategies I told you about at the engagement party, were exactly what convinced me Market Force needed new management." I sipped my champagne, though I did appreciate the preview. Olivia grabbed my arm, her pristine bridal manicure digging into my skin. Why would you do this?" I gently removed her hand. "Remember last Christmas, when you told everyone not to expect much from my pathetic little job gift-wise? Well, consider this my wedding present, a lesson in humility." "Sarah," my father finally found his voice. "All this time, you were building an empire?" I finished for him. "Yes. While you were lamenting my wasted potential, I was transforming Phoenix into one of the most powerful consulting firms in the country. 40 million in revenue last year alone." My mother swayed slightly. "But your apartment, your clothes were choices. I didn't need to show off my success. I just needed to work quietly until the right moment." I straightened my simple dress. And what better moment than my dear sister's wedding? The ballroom had descended into chaos. Guests were frantically Googling Phoenix Consulting Group, discovering just who I really was. Olivia's perfect day had become a spectacle of a different kind. Security. Olivia screamed. Get her out. I laughed softly. The Plaza Hotel. I own it. Bought it last month, actually. Just for today. I turned to the gathered guests. Please enjoy the celebration. The champagne is excellent. I selected it myself. As I walked toward the exit, I heard my mother calling my name. I didn't turn around. 10 years of dismissal and mockery had ended in a single moment of perfect justice. Outside, my driver held the door to my Bentley. No more sensible car needed. Where to, Ms. Mitchell? The office, I said. We have a company to restructure. My phone buzzed with messages. Family members suddenly remembering my existence. Business reporters seeking comments. Olivia's increasingly hysterical texts. I turned it off. Let them talk. Let them scramble to understand how the sister they dismiss had become the most powerful person in the room. Let them realize that every time they'd mocked my dead-end job, they'd been digging their own professional graves. Monday morning, I sat in my corner office, watching Market Force employees file into their building across the street. They didn't know it yet, but half of senior management would be gone by lunch. My assistant entered. Your sister and parents are in the lobby. Again, they've been there since 7. Tell them the CEO is in meetings all day. I turned back to my window. And Madison, send them the new organizational chart. The one showing their daughter's position being eliminated. That's cold, she smiled. No, I corrected her. That's business. I picked up a framed photo from my desk. The last family Christmas, where they'd all laughed at my modest lifestyle. I dropped it in the trash. Sometimes success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about waiting for the perfect moment to show them just how right you've become. And as Market Force's stock price soared under Phoenix's management, as my sister's carefully planned future crumbled, as my parents finally realized what they'd dismissed all these years, I knew one thing for certain. The dead-end job they'd mocked had become their dead end instead. And I had become exactly what they never thought I could be. Their boss.